Hey guys, Adam here. If you don't know, I teach high school culinary arts, and the number one thing that gets said to me by other faculty members or adults that I know, they always say, man, I wish I could take your class. Like, oh, I love that so much. We didn't have that when I was in high school, things like that. So I thought I would take an opportunity while it's summer. I'm still a little busy doing some other things, but I want to take time to talk about a few things, do a couple videos here and there about things that I enjoy, that I personally do a lot. So the first one we're going to talk about today, I want to talk about pork loin. Pork loin's fantastic because it can be very inexpensive, especially compared to beef and chicken. And you know, they sell it in different ways, but if you buy a whole one, it's an opportunity to save a lot of money. So for example, today I have this whole pork loin. This full pork loin comes from the back of a pig, from shoulder to butt, and it's got 3 different parts to it. But the great thing about it, this big piece of meat, which this one, it's not the biggest one ever. Let's see, we're talking about almost 13.5 pounds. All right, so that's a lot of meat here. But the great thing about it is it's $2.49 a pound. $2.49 a pound. So there's a lot of things that we can get from this cut of meat, including things like center cut chops, which are fantastic. Pork chops right now, I looked right before I started this video, it's June 2026, they're going $6 a pound for chops. So the meat that's in here for $2.50 a pound is being sold $6 a pound. All they're doing is cutting it for you. And that's a massive markup, especially if you're trying to save money. Even if you got a small family or you got a big family, this is something where you can eat good protein, and it's very inexpensive if you can do it yourself. This one, like I said, this was $33, right? Not on sale. Now, quite often you can find these on sale. Whenever I do find them on sale, I buy them immediately. You know, sometimes I'll just throw them in the freezer whole, but sometimes I cut them up first. And today what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut them up into different things. We're gonna talk about what you can get from each part of this pork loin and what you can do with it. So I'm gonna get this cut open and then we're gonna talk about it. All right, so what I'm gonna use today is just a regular chef's knife. You know, I got like butcher knives and stuff, but I don't have them with me right now. So, but this will work fine. Whatever knife you have, as long as it's sharp, it's going to help you cut this thing up really, really well. Now, I wouldn't have this thing sitting out for a while before you cut it up because it's going to get a lot looser. So even if you know, say put it in the freezer for like 30 minutes, right? You don't want it frozen solid, but this, I just pulled it right out the fridge and it's ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up. Toss this in the sink. Here we go. All right, so there are 3 different parts to this pork loin. So now this one side, you can see it's a lot darker. There's not as much fat here. This is what we call our rib end of the pork loin. Now here in the middle, this is our center. So obviously we're gonna get things like center cut chops from here. And then we're gonna have the sirloin end over here. So the sirloin end, not as dark. It's also a lot more lean. So we're gonna do different things with each one of these that are gonna help. Really, we could go the whole thing, just cut chops if you want. But your chops are gonna be a little bit different if they're cut from here, cut from here, cut from here. And just for consistency's sake, we're gonna get all our chops from the middle, but we're gonna talk about each part that we are going to do. Before we get started, one thing I do wanna make note of, when I took this out, the first thing I noticed was very unpleasant smell. A lot of times with beef, pork, you're gonna open it up and maybe it's not the best smell, especially when it's been packaged like this one. That doesn't mean that it's bad, right? Sometimes just from it sitting there, it's going to develop a sort of, you know, don't want to be negative, but an odor, right? But if you let it sit out outside of the package for a little while, that smell is going to dissipate. Even now, you know, I don't really smell it as bad as I did when I opened up the package. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut this into 3 sections. This rib end right here, we're going to cut this part about 1/3 of the way. And so this part, we're gonna see there's a little bit more fat in here. So this is like, if this was a cow, right? This is what you would consider the ribeye. Now you can cut this up into steaks and they'll be good. They're gonna be different than your center and your sirloin side. One thing that you can do, right? A lot of people will start off and cut the ends off, right? So we can take these ends and we're gonna get off the other side as well. We can just cut this up for stew meat, do stuff for like stir fry. And if you're all like, oh, well, you know, that's not enough, well, you can cut further in and do that as well. Then we're gonna go ahead and cut off from our sirloin to our center cuts. We're gonna move both of these over here for a minute. All right, so we have our rib end here, all right? So said before, it's gonna be a lot fattier. So depending on what you do it, you could take some of this fat cap off. I'm just gonna leave it like this for now. Depending on what I'm gonna do with it, I may cut it off later. One thing when you're cutting things here, it's better to cut bigger, because if later on, let's say you want, you know, we're gonna do thick chops. Let's say you want thin chops later on, you can take a thick chop and cut it to a thinner chop, but you can't take thinner chops and turn it into a thicker chop. So we're gonna start bigger, right? Then if later when we're gonna go cook something, we want it smaller, we can do it smaller. But what I'm gonna do with today is we're going to do just boneless ribs, all right? So we're gonna cut this. Once again, need to be really, really careful. Sharp knife is going to help. So we're gonna cut this in half. Here we go. And then we can do was just boneless ribs. So I go about like every 2 fingers roughly, and we're gonna take a slit in there. And then what we can do later, we can take this, put on whatever kind of seasoning, rubs that you enjoy. You could throw it on the grill, put it on the broiler, anything like that. And we're just gonna have some nice, tender, boneless ribs. And that'll be a very enjoyable meal. That's enough 2-3 people right there. So we're gonna put that to the side. And notch some more of these ribs. So now we got that done. Next section that we're gonna do, this is the center. Next, there's a section, sometimes it's on there better, sometimes it's not. We can take this and just cut this off really, really easy. And once again, we're gonna add that to our little bits of scrap that we can do other things with. So these center cut chops, obviously boneless chops, center cut, I like to do them about 2 fingers, same we kind of did with the boneless ribs. I like my pork chops to be a little thicker. Now, if you want thinner pork chops, right, cut them thinner, right? You know, I could also just take this and do it as a roast if I wanted to. So, you know, whatever size that you're looking for, you can do them thicker, thinner, just cut it in half. We're gonna cut it into these thicker, except we're gonna do about like 2 fingers, these thicker pork chops. It's my favorite way to have them. Super thick. I'll do a video later about how to cook these. So fat's really heavy on there. Later I'm gonna go and trim these up. But for now, I'm just gonna go ahead and cut through them. Now, other things that you can do with this, you know, if you're all like, oh, Adam, I'm not gonna cook something that thick. Other things we do is we can do stuffed pork chops, which are also fantastic. You can put anything inside of a pork chop and it's gonna be delicious. There's a lot of ways that I've done it. Now, if we wanna do that, all we're gonna do is just cut this in half, boom, not all the way through, but to a point that it's going to lay out flat. Do one real quick. Just be real careful not to go all the way through. So we can take this, put anything we want on the inside, fold it up, cook it. We're gonna cook it a little bit different. I'll talk about later in another video. If we stuff it, we're gonna cook it to a slightly different temperature than if we don't. Like I said, there's a ton of stuff that you can put in here that's going to be delicious. Some stuff will just sound absurd, but it's really, really good. Once again, there's a lot of fat cap on this, and I'm going to trim this off before I do anything with it. We're going to move on to the last part, but super easy with this one. We're going to move to this sirloin end. Now, the sirloin end, once again, we can still cut chops, right? We just want chops, whatever size we want, that we can do. But the main thing that I'm going to do with this, right, is once again, I'm going to take this end off, make it even, especially if I'm going to do chops. I want to keep it even. But I'm going to take this and throw this with kind of like my stew meats and stuff. So now, like with all those little scraps, like I've got enough for a really good meal going on there, whether I want to do some stir fry or some stews, things like that. So this right here on this sirloin end, if you go to the store and you just buy just like a small pork loin, it's not like it's from like a small pig. It's just this part of a pork loin. Now you could be paying like probably like $15 to $18, depending on where you're going, for this piece of meat, right? We were at $33 for this whole thing. Like I said, we can cook this as a whole thing. We can even butterfly this out maybe another day. I'll show you. It's one of my favorite ways to cut open a pork loin and to the point that it lays out flat and put stuff and we'll roll it up. But you know, that's another day. When I want to like tie this up with butcher string, keep it the way it is, you can sear it off, braise it, throw it in the oven, put it in a smoker is a fantastic way to do pork loin. Super, super easy. Like I said, I can turn this into chops, but I'm actually going to leave this size because I like to do a nice pork loin. If your family's not as big, you could just take it, cut it in half, and have smaller chunks of pork loin to cook rather than a big piece. If you like to, you know, cook something and then eat on it all week, fantastic way to do it. There are a lot of things you can do. Once you cook it, just start cutting it thin, make sandwiches is what I do a lot of at my house. Those are the pieces that we have, so look at this. What do we got? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 2-inch chops, all right? Massive. We got what you would consider like regular pork loin when you buy it at the grocery store. We got that. We've got a ton of stew meat, right? Going on here. Like I said, stir fry, cut it up into strips, whatever you want to do with it. And then we got these 2 sets of boneless ribs, $33. Now we bought that all separate, right? We're looking $50, $60 even. Like I said, this wasn't even on sale. If I bought this on sale and say it would, you know, I'd get them as low as like $20, right? Sometimes even lower depending on the size of them. Like that's a lot of food for a little bit of money. So it's something that's super easy, super simple, great way to save money, and also it's a, in my opinion, very easy protein to cook. So later I'm gonna do a video cooking some of these, cooking these chops. I'm gonna kind of walk you through how I would do it, you know, and depending on what sort of equipment you have, things like that. So we'll do that later. I ended up taking all of these little bits of stew meat, or like I said, stir fry, and I was looking at them, I was like, what would this make? Fantastic tacos. So I'm still cutting about the same way that I would stir fry. Getting rid of all of the fat, big chunky fat pieces, seeing if there's any good meat here and there that I can use. This was even a piece from our sirloin end. Most of this came from the rib end here. So just cutting off a little bit of that fat. But this is gonna make really good tacos. Just gonna throw them in the pan, cook them up. If you're like me, I love tacos. Like, it's my love language. It's my favorite thing ever. So, like I said, we're getting a good amount, right? This is gonna feed a couple regular people or just me and tacos, because tacos should come in 6, not 3. So I'm gonna finish this up. I got everything going into freezer bags, getting them labeled, getting them put up. Later I'm gonna do a video with some of these thick cut pork chops. Just kind of see how I like to season them up. We'll talk a little bit about cooking pork. Think about all this just for the price we get for, like, you know, like I said, $33, not even on sale. Ton of food, right? It's just me and my oldest son, and that's going to feed us for a while. That's going to it's going to become a lot of really, really good food. But yeah, if you see this and you're like, hey, that's interesting, that's something that I could do, something I'd be interested in, you know, leave me a comment, or whatever people do with these videos. Still really new at this. You know, if you're just happen to see this video, follow me. I'm going to be trying to put up more stuff. I'll have my regular things in there as well, but some interesting things, I think, when it comes to things that I teach my students, what I think that they should know. I know a lot of my students earlier on didn't get a lot of the information that I give now as I've just kind of progressed in my teaching. So if you're one of my former students, we're going to talk about some stuff that you maybe hadn't seen from me. Thanks again for being here, checking it out. But if you want to see some more stuff like this, just hang out, hang around, leave a comment, and we'll see you later. Bye. I'm gonna keep doing this. You're gonna have to leave. I can't turn off the camera. If you're still here, it's getting really weird at this point.